so much for tuning into Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I am your host, Christian D. Evans. And guys, we have someone very, very special and exciting to be bringing you today. We're going to talk a lot about, business entrepreneurship and life coaching, but also certain things that everybody is facing right now. This man is known for the quote of helping our people evolve emotionally to a place of feeling good is the number one cultural differentiation and retention strategy that exists. This man right here is a speaker, coach, and founder of Ellingson Enterprises, a coaching and training company. He's also helped people evolve their thinking in so many different ways, challenges around time, money, and people, allowing them to powerfully fulfill their mission in their life. I mean, how many of us are sitting there and we feel that we have more out there and we just haven't been able to fulfill that, right? In addition to over 25 years of speaking, coaching, and performing for all audiences across the United States, he and his wife, Amy, host a weekly television show during which they address topics of health, wealth, and relationships. Having gone through losing a business to building a multi-million-dollar business and having worked with a wide variety of organizations, he is able to help shift a company's collective thinking. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my man, Fletcher Ellingson. How you doing, my bud?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for that introduction, Christian. I really appreciate it.
Man, I'm very excited to be sitting down with you because obviously we're going to be talking a lot about. But I'd like to hear. Obviously, you built a business, and then obviously it failed, and then obviously now you built an incredible, successful business and sustainable. Love to kind of hear what that looks like. What were the pitfalls, and obviously what did you learn from that experience, man?
Yeah, you know what? When my first business, I've been an entrepreneur since I was in sixth grade, right? Paper route, then lawn route, then window washing business. I mean, on and on and on, right? So I've always loved business. I have a real heart for entrepreneurs because I really do believe, even in this day and age, with all the Amazons and the Googles and all these massive companies, small business still is the backbone of our country, man. It's still the engine that keeps us going. So I have a real heart for entrepreneurs. But what I realized through some of the biggest crashes as an entrepreneur, at the time, they didn't look like they were wins. They didn't feel like wins. They didn't, they felt like just one massive breakdown and setback. But I got to tell you, Christian, I'm grateful now because those were some of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned. And probably the biggest thing that I did in those times where my business was crashing was work harder. That was my strategy. Like, work harder, I'll work more hours, I'll work more days. And that strategy does work to a certain extent, but then you just burn out. And if you don't have the mindset, if you don't have some business sense behind that work ethic, you're still going to crash and burn. And that's exactly what happened. So I realized that I was missing some key components in my mindset and my business sense. And so that big crash that I'm thinking of when I lost everything, we walked away from our business, $20,000 in credit card debt, not the good kind of debt to have, right? Family of 5, mortgage, and zero income. Like, literally, we'd invested everything into this business and had to walk away. Again, didn't feel good. I couldn't see anything good about it at the time, but man, it spurred me to dig deep and build a new business that where I was able to build upon my mistakes and correct some things. So, yeah.
Well, that's incredible because I know, Fletcher, and I really appreciate you sharing this because, sometimes everybody says, right, hey, those experiences, you learn from them. But though, when you were going through that, Fletcher, explain at what point, going through that, did you learn and did you have that mindset and like, hey, I'm learning, this is great, at least I'm learning something? Or was it like months down the road, you're like, I hate this sucks. And then months down the road, you're like, oh, what did I learn? And actually analyze that situation. What did that look like?
Yeah, in the moment, it was scary. I was not sleeping. My marriage was in trouble. There's just a lot of bickering because I had to find a way to support our family of 5, right? And my wife, there was just stress, right? I mean, we managed to get through it, obviously, but it was a lot of stress. And it wasn't until years down the road that I actually looked back at that and was able to go, whoa, if that had not happened, I wouldn't be where I am today. I literally wouldn't, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have known what I know now. I was pretty young in areas of my personal development when it came to like judging people. And so I was really resentful about some of the people in my past life. And now I have nothing but gratitude. Now, would I want to hang out with them? No. Would I trust them? No. But they really did teach me some incredibly valuable lessons that, again, I wouldn't be where I'm at without those lessons.
Definitely. And I appreciate you sharing that because, with that being said, what did you learn specifically? And then as well as what boundaries have you put in place to make sure you're never in that situation again?
Oh boy, you love that. Number one, get a safety net. Like I began, I got my money sense together. Before I was just like operating from week to week, month to month at the best. Now, as a result of that, because Christian, things were so dire that we actually went on food stamps for a little bit. Nothing against food stamps. I'm glad it's in place for people. But when I remember being at the store and actually having to hand over the food stamps, that felt to me terrible. And I just remember thinking, I will never, ever be in this position again. Never. And so one of the things we began to do is as we paid off our debt, we began to also build this safety net. So we would always have, a bumper. And I'd heard that preached like over and over, right? Make sure you got, at least 3 months set aside. But in that time, I was like, who's got 3 months, set aside? That seemed like this fantasy to me. But so I just didn't understand. So I had to educate myself and make some tough decisions and begin to change my thinking. And that changing my think was really what it really made the difference. And we began setting aside, creating a bumper. And that allowed me to operate from a place of less scarcity, right? More abundance. And that's such a game changer because I was operating from a place of scarcity. And when you're operating from a place of scarcity, all your decisions are based on that scarcity mindset, right? So they determine your outcome. And as soon as I switched over to an abundant mindset, where I was trusting that life was working out for me, where I was trusting that clients were coming to, where I was trusting that whatever happened, I could work through. And now I had massive evidence that I could work through it because I had worked through it. Things begin to shift in my expectations. And that was a real radical moment when I realized I have a lot more capacity than I ever realized. And I'm resourceful, I'm capable, and I'm flexible. My whole self-image began to change because of this terrible thing that I'd gone through.
Well, see, I appreciate you bringing that up because I was going to ask you, like, with confidence and self-image, right? What I find is that you can have the skills, but if you don't have the self-image to know that you're worthy and you're capable, and you don't have the courage and the strength to go and do that,
yes,
then all the skills are irrelevant. So let's dive into that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Let's talk about obviously where you were at and what that did and devastated your self-image, and how long did it take you to be able to say, okay, you know what? I failed, but I'm not a failure, right? And actually be able to, build that self-esteem and self-image higher, so you're able to accomplish that next level. What did that look like?
Yes. So, boy, that's such a good question, and I'm just actually processing it now as you're asking me this. And I think the big difference was that I stayed in action. I just didn't sit on the couch and mope around. I had a pattern of being in action. I really believed that it was all about always taking action. And so when we had zero money, I just got out there and started having conversations with people. And there was a small tech firm in our very small community. I live in a community that's only 5,000 people, right? It's a little resort town. But there was a gentleman who had started up a tech company, and they were building websites. And this was right around the time where websites everybody knew what they were, but most business owners thought, I don't need a website. I think this is a fad. We're going to pass, right? And one thing that caught my interest was this gentleman had developed a product And again, this is going back before this thing I'm about to explain ever existed, but he developed a product where you could go online and you could go to a website and type in, I want to move to Seattle, Washington, and I want to buy a home that's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, this price range, hit enter, and it would give you all these results. That technology, which, called an IDX technology for real estate, which is now everywhere, nobody had that. And when we saw that, we were like, this is unbelievable. I mean, because the only time you could have access to the MLS listing data was when you actually went to a brick and mortar real estate shop and we looked through that the big MLS book, right? And they published that every week. So this was revolutionary. This was a disrupting technology. And when we saw that, we said, we can sell this. And so what we did was I just started cold calling real estate companies. And I said, I've got a product. You've got to see this. It's going to disrupt this whole industry. You're not going to believe it. Can we come and present it? Fortunately, the response was overwhelming. And so that just staying in action and making the calls, right? Taking the risks and risking my own self-significance, right? That's what made the difference.
Well, that's awesome. And I really appreciate you diving that in. And I like to talk a little bit as well, when you were hitting that business point, you put everything in there. And Fletcher, because I think there's a lot of business owners, it's hard to say, I quit. And it's not that you quit, it is that I need to pivot and go in a different direction.
Yes.
And when you put everything into that business and you realize it's not working, something's not producing, something's not aligning, at what point did you say, okay, I just got to close that door? I'm not quitting on myself, I'm not quitting on my future, but at what point do you say, okay, this opportunity, I have to fold and I have to go somewhere else? Because that's a tough decision. And definitely in today's world, it's don't ever quit, don't ever quit. And so sometimes we misunderstand that concept a little bit and saying sometimes we do have to pivot. So let's walk through that and your thought process. And I mean, that was a tough decision, I would imagine. That was your baby. And it was like, oh man.
Yeah, it was a tough decision. It was, however, made a little more easy for me, the decision, just because the business relationship that we had with some other people was so toxic. And at that point, it was just like, whoa, no amount of money is worth this. And so we walked, and also we had extended ourselves financially, again, not having that critical business sense and money sense. I really did believe that if I just worked harder, everything would turn around, and that just wasn't the case. I was missing some critical pieces, but the toxic relationship, the business relationship, just made it, a no-brainer. We got to get out of this and move on, cut bait, move on. I'll figure something else out.
And I give you a lot of props, because in order to, sometimes what I realize is, and in one of my businesses I've had, we were doing very well, my businesses and everything like that. And then at some point I realized it was a toxic relationship. Even though the results and the profitability was incredible, you had to have that decision and say, hey, I got to move on, because long term, I know it's not going to end well. And I appreciate you sharing that, because that did solidify, but also having that conversation with yourself and say, hey, you know what, you got to move on. So I know that's tough, but let's kind of dial in a little bit as well. So you're talking about self-esteem, obviously, and I know values. You're known for quoting this: "Don't mean jack." Tell us a little bit more about that, bud.
Yeah, you bet. So I really do believe this. I really do believe that values don't mean jack. Now, I'm not saying they're not important, but I think they make very little difference in the lives of an individual. And I'll tell you why I think that. First of all, what is a value? The way I define a value is that it is simply an indicator of preference. That's all a value is. It's an indicator of preference. Now, we talk a lot about values, like, oh, I want to be around people who have my values. Oh, I want a spouse. I want a partner that has the same values. I want them to value, family and time together and vacations and, all that stuff, right? And we even hear people like that who are maybe single, like, I'm looking for somebody to hook up with, but boy, it's really important to me that we have the same values. Well, let me just make something abundantly clear. Everybody, and I mean everybody, with extremely few exceptions, have the same values. And I'm going to give you an extreme case. Now, just play along with this for a second, Christian, but do you believe or do you value family?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. How about money? Do you value having money?
Yeah.
How about value freedom?
Yep.
Yeah. How about value time?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Do you value honesty?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And do you value creativity,
Yes. Uh-huh.
resourcefulness?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you value being your word, like integrity?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, great. So now these are just 8 values that we listed off, 8 or 10 values, and there's lots more. But so what you're basically telling me, Christian, and I share those same values, but you and I then are very well aligned with the values of the mob, the mafia, syndicated crime syndicates, right? Cartels. You see, they also share those same family, time, connection, right? Honesty, honesty and loyalty, woo, big on that, right? We know that within their own family, right? Big on that. You see, we all share the same values, but values are just an indicator of preference. I prefer to be with somebody who has, I prefer family time. I prefer freedom. I prefer all this stuff. So the values are not the difference maker in our life. And again, this is just my opinion, right? They indicate a preference, but the real thing that moves the needle, that gets the results, those are our standards when we talk about our values. So yeah, I understand you. I understand that you value family time, but what's your standard around it? Well, I don't know. We go out to eat sometimes. Like we don't have a clear standard. Like a standard would be, oh yeah, we value family time. That's why on Sunday nights we have game night. That's why we make sure to go and take walks together once a week, or that's why I go to my kids' games, or that's why I invite the kids to see what I'm doing in my work, right? I valued family time, and my standard is that we actually do engage at this level during the week, right? It's measurable, and it's not just hit and miss. This is a standard. It's what I'm willing to settle for. Same thing for, I guess, another really easy example is health and fitness. We all value health, right? But what's my standard around it? Well, I just mostly sit on the couch, or I watch a lot of Netflix. But I value health, right? What's your standard? Yeah. So for me, when I realized I didn't have a standard around health and fitness, I got one. I made one, and I got into triathlons, and I went from, and this was a great opportunity for me because I didn't believe I could ever do one, which was funny because there's nothing wrong with me, right? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm very able-bodied. I have mobility. I can run, but I had to learn how to swim. I had to learn how to ride a bike, like a road bike, and I had to learn how to run a distance because I didn't know how to do that. But I did that, and I worked myself up through these triathlons, and finally did an Ironman. And so after that, I realized, I do have a standard. My standard is that I'm always, that I'm frequently working out, and I'm working out, X amount of times a week. And then I even narrowed it down after that because I didn't ever want to do another Ironman again. I was like, nope, that's too much. Doesn't work for me, right? Glad I did it, learned a lot, but that's another discussion. But what I did, but from that, I created a different standard for me. And that standard was I always, any day of the week, Christian, if you call me up and say, hey, Fletcher, tomorrow, I want you to compete with me in an Olympic distant triathlon, I could say, you bet, let's do it. The 1 mile swim, the 26-mile bike, and the 6 mile run. Let's go do that. My standard was to always be able to do that any day of the week. And I did that for a number of years. And then last year, I decided I don't want that standard anymore. It's not serving my life. I'm having to still maintain that level, and it was requiring more time and effort that I wanted. So I said, I'm gonna lower my standard, because it's always okay to lower your standard if it serves your life. And I still valued health and fitness, but I didn't need to be maintaining such that higher level. So now I'm like, hey, if Christian calls up and says, hey, we're doing a sprint triathlon, right, which is, you know, a little less than a mile swim, 14-mile bike, and a 3-mile run, let's go do that. I'll be like, you bet, Christian, I'm there, sign me up. Because that's my new standard, right? I'm always in a level of fitness that I can do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And it's actually very interesting how you took it macro to micro, right? And talking about those intricacies. Because what I find so interesting is, I was talking to some, you have to, in order to win in life, you have to identify what is winning for you, right? Yeah. And in order to identify, then you work your way backwards and accomplish that. And like you're saying, and also in relationships, I mean, this is what I find so interesting is the woman, right? And they don't know why there's a miscommunication. Well, I don't feel prioritized. Well, I've done this, this, and this, and this. Well, I don't feel prioritized, right? And the thing is the man thinks this makes her feel prioritized, when in fact this is over here makes her feel prioritized. And the biggest thing is, same thing with, like you're saying, these are the standards. Yes. And having that conversation. So let's talk a little bit about micro a little bit. Okay. So when you have this conversation with people and they now understand it's not values, right? That's just generic kind of thing, but really getting standards and identifying how micro should they get and at what point in each aspect of their life, and what, where should they focus their energy on the first one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure does. I love this question. So good. So the first thing I think we need to do is, first of all, we need to just get honest with ourselves and clarity around what our existing standard is. Like, what have we been willing to settle for? What have we been willing to settle for in our health and fitness? Feeling yucky, sitting on the couch a lot, binging food and binging Netflix a lot. No, please hear me. There's nothing wrong with that. And I really believe that there is nothing wrong. Nobody needs to change anything. The question is, or the thing to do is identify what your standard is and ask this next question, which is, does this standard serve my life? It's not about good, bad, right, or wrong. In my coaching curriculum, we strip out all those descriptors of good, bad, right, and wrong. It's, does this standard or does this thing serve my life? Does it empower me or disempower me? Does it serve me or not serve me? So for instance, let's take the money. Let's take the money conversation. We value money. Years ago, I valued money, but if you looked at my savings account, I didn't have a savings account. So my standard, even though I valued money, my standard was to operate without a safety net, without a savings account. Now my standard is this. I identified that I wanted to never be in debt again and never have a debt collector after me. So my standard now is I'm always at least 3 months paid ahead on my water, my sewer, my garbage, my electric, my Wi-Fi. Anything like that. I'm always at least 3 months ahead. I'm not exaggerating. The people down at City Hall, because the other thing I always used to do is, and still do most of the time, is I used to go down and pay in cash, and because it was a continued lesson for me. This is money I've generated. Now it's going to bless someone else, and I am ahead of the game financially. It fed me. I liked that. But they would laugh at me when I'd go down to the PUD. They'd be like, you have a balance of $800. I was like, I know. It feels really good. Just in case someday I might need that, I don't have to stress about it. And they're like, okay, And then I became so abundant that I was like, man, you know what? Now, I'm just going to pay somebody else's bill. So now we begin to play this fun game of now we're paying it forward. The standard is, once I get my safety net up to here, now I'm going to start blessing other people, right? And this is such a fun thing for my kids to see, because now one of my daughters is also doing it at Christmas time. We actually go to the PUD together and we pay people's bills, anonymously, right? But we're just blessing other people and paying it forward, because the game has reached that level of such fun we have such certainty about our financial life now.
Well, that's awesome, because what you're doing basically is you're taking one aspect of your life and you're analyzing it and say, why was my standard this, right? Where, okay, I got to put everything back in the business, whatever it was. And you're living basically just flat, right?
Yes.
And in fact, negative a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I hope I make a sale because I got to pay my people, right? Or something like that.
Right.
Nobody wants
Yes.
to be in that situation. So let's dial into that. What did that story look like? Because it wasn't like, okay, you know what, boom, all of a sudden now we make money, right? It's okay, hey, you took $100 and yeah, you want to take the whole $100 and get groceries, but you can't, because you said to yourself, I'm going to take $20 and put it into my savings.
Yes.
And now I only have $80 though. Man, that hurts. But I have $80 and I stuck with what I have, right? It's a win for me, right? Maybe I won't be able to buy as much over here, but guess what? It's a win because I'm implementing what I told myself.
Yes.
So, because I always think it's those small wars that you have to win, those battles, because then you'll graduate into, okay, here's $1,000, here's 10,000, here's $1 million, here's 10 million, here's 100 million, right? And you have to start with that small thing. So what did that look like for you and your wife and your family to get there?
Gosh, such a good question. I really hope people really hear this. It is exactly what you said. You begin to take these small steps. And so sometimes I have clients who say, again, I value money, or I want to buy a house, but they don't have a down payment yet, and they don't have an account for down payment. So I literally say, I want you to put a mason jar on the counter and put $5 in it today, or put $1. You just took action. You just started. You began to create momentum. So what we did was with all the financial experts tell you to do. What a novel concept. Pay yourself first, right? Pay yourself first. The electric company or whoever, they can wait. I mean, obviously, if they're going to turn your power off, okay, figure something out, but pay yourself first. Look, I don't care if you find a quarter or a nickel or a penny on the road. Take that, put it into your savings account. I mean, like, begin to get some traction here. So we began paying ourselves first. Then we began living off what was there after that. And we had to tighten our belt. Now, here's where one of my, that strong work ethic came in, because, I had other skills too. I've been a professional magician for 30 years. So I did a lot of corporate gigs, and, I started off on the street down in Seattle on the corners, it's like busking, for tips. So I honed my craft, and then it became a very lucrative thing for me. So I would just do that. I was like, I'll do more magic gigs, because I love it. It's so much fun. And then that was bonus money, right? So that's where my work ethic really allowed me to, now we had shifted our mindset to abundance, and we're paying ourselves first. We're taking action. Now my work ethic comes in and really supports all that effort.
That makes perfect sense. I love it. I think that's fantastic. I really appreciate you getting micro with that a little bit, because, again, it's having those deep conversations and allowing people to understand that it doesn't happen overnight, but having that consistent daily work habit and that pattern to really develop those results. So let's talk a little bit about, mediocre now, right? So now, okay, people, and it's actually, to me, what I find so interesting, I had a sales guy, and, he went from making $20,000-$30,000 to $30,000 a month, right? However, though, his expenses were just ridiculous. And I was saying, dude, we're paying you $30,000. Like, what are you doing with the money, man? Because he's like, man, I need a paycheck now. Like, I can't just we got to wait till the weekends and then process it. Then he's like, no, I got it. And anyways, my point is let's talk about this, because everybody loves it, and we all do it. But definitely what I love about your story, Fletcher, and from what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but life hits you. And life hits you hard, where then humility came in, and you're like, I don't care what other friends and family are looking at me. I got to do what I got to do for my family. And then when pride goes down and arrogance goes down, your humility, you don't care. Hey, this is me. I don't care if I'm driving a little Honda, whatever. I don't care, because guess what? I got to do what I got to do, right? And then what happens is when you get to that next level and where you're at now, you still don't care. You're not keeping up with the Joneses, because you've learned that lesson, right?
Yes.
And you live below your means, but now you're in a situation where you have remarkable amount of means, and you still, relative to what other people are making, they may have more products or, Cadillacs, whatever, or like all the boats, but you have more freedom and more time and resources than they do, because you can go and bless other people. So what did that journey look like? And what was that thought process to always keep that, hey, you know what? We can control the expenses. Sometimes we can't control the outgo, but we can control the out expense. What did that look like?
Oh boy, that was such a fun game to play, because for the first time in my life, my income was going up every single month, significantly. Every single month it was going up, but I was a frugal person. I was like, because I vowed I'm never going to go back to that place, right? So I'm always going to make sure that I'm taken care of financially, and so we just began to set these little targets, little targets. We got a spreadsheet, and it was month by month by month, and we'd add to the envelopes. And seeing that momentum, like seeing it on a spreadsheet, it was so fulfilling, right? And I would just look at it multiple times a week and like, oh, sweet, that's awesome. And that, it's kind of like it's like that biofeedback where you see the result and it continues to inspire and motivate you, so you just want more. That was the game that I was playing, because a long time ago when I was broke, one of the things that I wasn't doing was I wasn't looking at how much I had. We were just spending it, and then like we would be shocked, like, oh my God, we're overdrawn, and then we'll have to scramble and go back. Well, what we were spending? No, I know where all my expenses are. I know what the money's going out. And I have also really gotten micro in what's important to me. So what's important to me is we travel a lot. We go to Maui once or twice a year, and we go to different places. And that's what's important to us. Experiences. We have a very modest home. Could we have a better, or could we have a bigger one or a fancier? Yeah, we could. And nothing against people having that, right? But again, it always comes back to the question, what serves my life? And what serves my life is playing this game of paying myself first, making sure I have a significant safety net for me and my kids, and then setting these little goals of where do we want to go travel next, and having that travel fund. The house, we live in a beautiful place. I'm looking outside right now. I'm just like, we live in a beautiful place. So I don't really care so much about my dwelling. We have decent cars that we enjoy, and that's it. So make it a game. Set yourself up for a game that feels good, and then set it up so that you can win the game.
Yeah. Fletcher, if you could just be straight, like, what does it feel like as a man now, from what it was before to now, and to know that you are providing for your family at that level? What does that feel like?
It feels really good. It feels really good to I was about to say, to be in control of my destiny. I know control is an illusion, right? So take it with a grain of salt. But what it feels really good is to know this: I'm resourceful, capable, and flexible. That's one of the ways I define myself. I am resourceful, capable, and flexible. If I am those three things, Christian, there's nothing I can't do. If I'm resourceful, I'll figure out. That doesn't mean I have to know how to do everything. It means I can connect with somebody who can advise me, who can mentor me, who can show me. I can look to people who have done it, which is exciting, because that means the fact that they've done it makes it more likely and more possible that I can also do it, right? If I'm resourceful, capable, and flexible, I can do anything. I can create the life that I want. That feels really good. And that mindset piece, that was what was missing before, a long time ago. I was positive. I was extremely capable. I was positive and, fun to be around. I was a good person, but I had a lot of insecurity about who I was and what I was capable of. Mm-hmm. I don't question that anymore. I worked a lot. I worked really hard on that. I worked diligently, I should say, instead of hard. I worked diligently. I was persistent in rewiring my thinking. And that's what I help my clients do. All I do is help rewire my clients' minds and their nervous system, because when we have influence on what and how we're thinking and how our nervous system is reacting, we have access to creating at a much higher level. We become more effective, we become more efficient, and we begin to navigate life with a greater sense of ease and joy. I mean, I'm sure you have met lots of people who you see them and they're just navigating life with this sense of ease. And you're like, and other people are like, how are you so calm? Or how'd you create that? Or, if there's an upset, they don't get stuck in it, right? They move through it. Mm-hmm. And so I've got all these affirmations. I'm resourceful, capable, and flexible. One of the things I say all the time to myself, Christian, is good things are lined up, stacked up, and showing up daily. I mean, right? What a great way to start the morning. Good things are lined up, stacked up, and showing up daily. I mean, I just love that image, right? It's this positive expectation. And you know what, man, when we have those expectations, and expectation is really where desire and belief meet in the middle, right? When you've got a desire and you've got a belief that it can happen, man, that's called an expectation. And when you are aware of them, man, life just starts like happening, and people are on the outside, they're going like, wow, how are you doing all that, right?
Well, and there's a lot of points that you mentioned, but let me ask you this one, because obviously you mentor hundreds of people and you've mentored a lot, and helping them totally empower themselves to achieve great things in their life. Who mentored you during that time? Did you just pull yourself up with the bootstraps, or were there some individuals that said, hey, Fletcher, I see you can become someone so much more, and that's where it allowed you to have that self-esteem? Or was it just yourself and you like you said, just to switch that mindset? What does that look like?
Yeah, so that's a really important question. I'm glad you asked that, because we don't have to do it all by ourselves. And man, if I had to do it all by myself, I would not be where I'm at today. So some of my mentors are, of course, Tony Robbins. I'm right now, I'm in a coaching program. I paid $25,000 a year to be coached. Why? I mean, and I used to tell my mom this, because I'd pay all this money for coaching, and she'd be like, Fletcher, why on earth are you paying all that money? And I'll say, well, Mom, it has literally been the thing that has helped me generate millions of dollars. It's been the thing that has allowed me to create the marriage of my dreams. It's been the thing that has allowed me to create this level of health and wellness in my life, right? I mean, so 25 grand. Yeah, I remember writing that check the first time. I was like, what am I doing? And I wasn't going to do it, but fortunately, my wife is she's as big of a personal development buff as I am. And she's like, Fletcher, I want you to write that check. So thank God for her, But yeah, Tony Robbins. I'm in coaching right now in a program called with David Bayer. What's his name? Of course, Zig Ziglar. Read all his books. Norman Vincent Peale. I was reading Norman Vincent Peale when I was in sixth grade. Right. That's when this journey began. J.B. Glossinger. I mean, Bob Proctor. All the greats. Right. Wayne Dyer. I'm a junkie when it comes to personal development, and what you'll find is there's a lot of similarities in there. But each time you hear it from a slightly different angle, it becomes even more empowering. You hear it like, oh, now it clicks, or, oh, I got that, or, oh, I'm connecting the dots now. So I always have people in my life, whether it's on YouTube videos or books or go to courses. I'm always learning. I'm always in school at some level.
Yeah, definitely. And so let's talk about, obviously, and I appreciate you sharing this, because see, what's interesting is I find a lot of men specifically. Now, women tend to be more authentic. They share with their friends and stuff like that. Men, they tend to hold it in, and they don't want to share, definitely with their friends and everybody,
yes.
That, they're failing. They failed a business. They owe millions upon millions of dollars. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I literally talked to someone a few months back, and he was in a situation where he owns a yacht business, and he helps build and develop yachts and stuff like that and all that. And I was asking him, how much is he in the red every single month? He says, I'm in the red almost $20,000. Like, I owe all these expensive, and I'm just taking SBA loans just to keep everything running. And I'm like, dude, that future is not looking good, and it just keeps going. You have to do something extreme. And so my point is he was open enough, because I think enough life or God will put enough pressure on you where all of a sudden you have to make a decision, and then you have to break and open up. So my question is to you, Fletcher, as a man that, was prideful and you're like, I'm doing this, I'm doing, and then all of a sudden you got very humble all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Because we all have, I got my same story. What did that look like in regarding, like, how did you work through that, and how did you take ownership of your story and was able to be authentic enough and say, hey, yes, I failed, but I'm not a failure. and it's okay. And like you said,
Mhm.
surround yourself with other people, and that's how you empower truly other individuals. But how long did it take you to say, this is my story, and I now have to share this?
Yeah. I'm pausing. I'm just really thinking about that. It's been like, it has been a journey, right? I think there was an initial like, crap, I screwed up. I really screwed up, and I got to figure a way out. The fact that I said I screwed up, that's the beginning of owning my story. But I didn't own it fully because there was still so much blame. Like, I screwed up because they didn't do this, or they didn't, or, they did do this, they didn't do that. They said, there was a lot of blame still going on. But I began to own it when I said I screwed up. Now, it is imperative that I take full ownership of all of my failures, all of my successes, quote unquote failures, quote unquote successes. I am responsible 100% for my life. Everything. Did things happen that were beyond my control and that caused suffering in my life? Yes, absolutely. But I'm going to take responsibility for it. You see, a number of years ago, I got divorced, and part of my story around that divorce was, well, it's 50-50. I'll take 50% of the blame. But she's got 50% of that too. Later, as I began, again, taking on more and more of my story, I realized, hold on a second, whose life is this? Is this my life? Yeah. Is it 100% my life or just 50%? No, 100%. Whose marriage was that? Was it my marriage or somebody else? No, it was my marriage. Fletcher was married. Whose divorce was it? Fletcher's. So I'm 100% responsible for my life. I'm 100% responsible for my marriage. I'm 100% responsible for my divorce. So some people say, well, like, no, but what about all that stuff she did? No. I'm taking 100% responsibility for my life. And that life includes a marriage, a divorce, and another marriage, right? I'm in an absolute wonderful marriage of my dreams. I'm responsible for that too. You see, if I start doling percentages of power out, like, no, she was responsible for 50% of that. Now I've only got 50% say in my life. Oh, right. Oh, no, Christian's to blame for that. He didn't show up and he didn't do that. Oh, great. So Christian's now got a piece of my life. Well, so now my ex-wife has 50%, Christian has 10%, my teacher has 15%, and pretty soon I'm backed into a corner and I have 0% power in my life. And I know people may hear this and say, well, you're kind of going extreme. Yeah, I am, but it's to prove a point. This is what we do. We give up our power instead of saying, no. In the book of Fletcher's life, this is his story. And I'm going to own my story, all the good, all the stuff that didn't feel good, all the stuff that served me, and all of the stuff that didn't serve me, because all of that combined makes up my life. 100%, I own it. And so I love your question. And I encourage anybody listening, take 100% responsibility for your life, because here's the deal. It's the only time that you can really embrace your personal power and experience it. When we make a commitment for which we take responsibility, that's the only time we can experience our personal power. When we take responsibility for the commitments we've made. And I am committed to my life. So therefore, I'm taking responsibility for it so I can actually experience the power of my life.
Fletcher, I really appreciate you sharing this, because it's just so, I want to foot stomp this, because, It doesn't matter what race, it doesn't matter what gender, it doesn't matter what age, it doesn't matter if you're mommy and daddy issues, it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter your
Yes.
financial
Yes.
situation, it doesn't matter what country, right? It comes down to taking full ownership. And the biggest thing that I love what you said is that you're not responsible for what your wife did, right? You're responsible for what you did, and you took 100% ownership of it. You can judge, you can say, yeah, 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 but at the end of the day, that is blaming and getting blame. And like you said, you're giving up ownership. And once
Yes.
you do that, now let me ask you a follow-up question on that. Once you did that, and you realized I was the one that divorced, I was the one that, but then also, like you said, now I have this amazing marriage. I have this amazing kids. I have this amazing business, right? You took full ownership. How was that devastating, but also freeing at the same time?
Yeah. So if I hadn't have taken full ownership of that, that would impact my life and my marriage now, right? If I'm still playing the blame game on my previous marriage, that impacts the marriage that I'm in, right? If I'm still blaming my old business partners for all that stuff, that's going to impact the way I conduct business now. And it's certainly going to make me a hypocrite when I tell my clients to drop your judgment against those that have judged you or hurt you, or right. I mean, I can't in good conscience say that. I mean, I didn't make my marriage work. I was not able to make my first marriage work. I wasn't able to make it work, clearly, because I'm not in it. So, and here's the deal, Christian, there's no shame in that. There's when we stop judging ourselves and say, oh, how about some self-compassion? I tried everything I could. I used all the tools in my toolbox at that time. Now, do I have different tools now? I sure do. But I didn't have those then. That was me at my best. That was me doing the best that I could with the tools that I had at that time in my life. I didn't have these other tools. And that comes back to, I always believe that everybody is always doing the best they can with the tools that they have, given all their past experience. Now, granted, at times my best did not look very good, right? I'll give you that. But even then, even when I lied or cheated or stole or whatever I did, I'm thinking back to junior high and high school and some of the things I did. I was like, God, I'm grateful I'm alive. I'm lucky to be alive. But even then, that was just me. That was young Fletcher doing the best he could with the tools that he had. And now I'm doing the best I can with the tools that I have. So it allows for us to drop judgment. And when we could drop our judgment in its place, we see compassion for others and compassion for self. And that's a wonderful place from which to operate.
Man, I love this. This is some good stuff here, guys. I hope you guys are taking notes. And guys, I just want to share, stop here for a second. Share this with your friend or family and individual, because I know many of you guys are thinking about yourself, but also thinking about other individuals. Share this because this will impact their life tremendously, tremendously. And really, Fletcher, I can hear your heart and feel your heart coming through. And I really just appreciate you opening up and being very authentic and kind of sharing this with our audience. Now, I would like to say something regarding what you said earlier on. You wrote that $25,000 check, and that was uncomfort. But what I love about uncomfort, definitely if you're aware of it, is it allows you to grow. And once you understand that truth, then you're like, okay, I want to be uncomfortable all the time, right? Because I'm going to grow. And now my question though is this 25,000, I want to kind of dial it into the rejection experiment and how obviously being uncomfortable in that regard allowed you to grow tremendously. What was that? Explain that to our audience. And then obviously what has been the outcome because of that?
Oh yeah. So a number of years ago, I decided to play the game that I want to play, which is to impact as many lives as I can, and to grow my business and to be a source of kindness and contribution. Right. To do that, I had to get past some things that were holding me back. Number one, the fear of rejection. And I know for most entrepreneurs and most salespeople, they're even if they're very seasoned, at some level, they're still dealing with a fear of rejection. So I've always done well in sales, but it's not just sales. I needed to be making lots of requests in order to grow my business to the place that I want to take it. So what I decided to do was to put myself in intentional situations where I would make audacious and ridiculous requests of people, with the intent that they would reject me, that they would say no, like, get the hell out of here. That's crazy. Are you crazy? They had to be weird things. Now, there were just a couple rules. One was I couldn't tell anybody that I was asking that this was an experiment, right? I couldn't say, hey, I'm doing this rejection experiment, so I'm going to ask you this question. Couldn't do that, right? Number two, the request had to make me really nervous, scared, fearful. Like, it had to be really uncomfortable, because I was building up that muscle. I was rewiring my nervous system. And number three, I couldn't say to my friends who might be out there with hey, you guys, I'm going to go do this rejection experiment. Watch this, right? It couldn't be like that, because then I would be doing it to show off or impress somebody. I had to be really legitimately scared. So I began doing this. I began making ridiculous requests of people. Like, I'd be standing in line at the store and I'd say to somebody, I'd tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, do you mind if I take cuts in front of you for no good reason? Now, I had to say the no good reason part, right? It wasn't, because otherwise it would be reasonable, like, oh, because I got to get to the hospital, or I got to get to, no. Can I take cuts for no good reason? So, that was an example. Or I'd walk up to somebody in a coffee shop, and this one scared the hell out of me. This was almost a total failure on my part. I said, I'm going to go over to that person and ask them to have a staring contest with me. Just a total stranger. And so I saw the person. It was easy because there was only like one person in the coffee shop. So I was like, oh, I guess it's going to be that person. So, and here's what's really interesting, Christian. As soon as I would come up with these ideas, oh man, you can hear the chatter, the mind chatter. It just starts trying to justify and defend and reason you out of it. You're like, don't do that. She probably won't even find that funny or amusing, or don't do that. That's silly. I mean, my mind would just start tick, 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 tick. And so I was really aware of that. And that was always like the sign, like, oh yeah, that's something I need to do then for sure.
Interesting.
So I walked over to that person, and they were sitting right by another exit in the coffee shop. And so I walked over to her at the very last second, chickened out, just walked out the door, got into my car, and started driving away. And I got to the stop sign, and I was like, dang it, Fletcher, what are you doing? I mean, I was perspiring. I was a little shaky. I was like, this is exactly why you need to do this. All you're doing is asking somebody to stare into your eyes, right? But you're violating all of these cultural rules, like you don't do that, right? It's too intimate, it's vulnerable, it's rude. You're dealing with all this stuff. So I took a deep breath, drove around the block, went back to the parking lot, went in, sat down, and I said, hi, my name's Fletcher. You don't know me. Just wondering though, would you be willing to have a staring contest with me? The first person to blink loses. And the person said, same thing that almost everybody says when I make these ridiculous requests. They say, what? Right? Because it's a pattern interrupt, even for the other person. They're not like, wait, did you say what I think I said? Or I got confused. Say that again. So I repeated myself, and the person said, sure. They just said yes. And so we had the staring contest, right? Yeah. And so that's just an example. But part of your question was like, what were some of the results? Well, some of the results were that I went to Mazatlan, Mexico, and I ended up, from a rejection experiment, I ended up leading a sales seminar at the resort where we were staying to 50 people who they were, in Mazatlan, Mexico. I didn't speak Spanish, but they spoke enough English they could understand me. They were in timeshare sales, and I met with the manager, and I just said, hey, you don't know me, but here's what I do. What do you think about me coming to present to your agents? Well, we talked for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then he said, hey, how does Wednesday morning sound? And he said, not only do I want you to come, but I'm going to make it mandatory. All 50 agents need to be there. So we were there. We had a great hour-long session. And then they found out my wife was a physician, a family physician, with an emphasis on health and wellness. And then they asked her to come and do a 30-minute presentation later the week while we were there. So the craziest things would happen as a result of these rejection experiments. It's how I got my television show. My wife and I do a weekly television. We just went over our 100th episode a couple months ago. But I went down and approached a TV studio and said, here's my idea. They're like, who are you? And so I pitched them on the idea. They're like, we really like that. Let's do it. We'll try it. And then that was a few years ago, and now we're still doing it. Right. What I found, Christian, is that people would say yes way more than they would say no on the most ridiculous things. I mean, I've got some that are just absolutely wacky. Right. But what I realized was that every time I would do it, I didn't die, because I felt like I might die. Right. But I didn't. That was just my brain and my nervous system trying to keep me safe. Yeah. And so that was a powerful experiment. And I highly recommend that, because I want to become a master asker. I want to be able to ask anything of anybody. And so this was my training for that. And it made a huge, huge difference in what became possible for my life.
Well, see, I just love those examples, because like you said, what I found so interesting is that the person said, wait, what? Is a pattern interrupt? You interrupt their pattern. But then also they say, well, sure. Yeah. I mean, and then what's interesting is it got you uncomfortable. But then let me ask you this. After that, did you just walk away and say, all right, have a good day? Or were you able to, converse a little bit, talk about it,
Yeah, there were, so I didn't explain to them why unless they asked afterward. And so there were a few times because remember I mentioned the person who I said, can I take cuts in front of you for no good reason? So she said the same thing. She's like, what did you say? I said, can I take cuts in front of you for no good reason? And she thought about it and she was like, and then she said, I guess so. And so she said, go. So I got in front of her, and then the craziest thing happened. She said, do you want to take cuts in front of my friend right there as well? And her friend turned around and said, I don't think so. Right. So two very different responses. And of course, what they're responding to is the story in their head. Right. Yeah. And so so I was like, oh, no problem. Okay, no problem. Because I did ask her, I said, hey, can I take cuts in front of you? And she's like, no, I don't think so. And I said, okay, no problem. And after I got my drink, I had to walk by their table where they were sitting, and I was going out to my car. And the woman who was like, I don't think so, she said, hey, I have a question. And I said, yeah. She said, why on earth did you do that? And so we actually sat down and I told her about it. And she was just like so fascinated. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be thinking about that all day long, she said. Because it was, again, a pattern interrupt. It was something different, right? Yeah.
And plus what you're saying is it builds this confidence, this self-image, and you can come up to this guy that's got all these sales agents and say, hey, my name's Fletcher, and just talk to him. And then what that does is all of a sudden, what I always found so interesting is definitely in today's world, marketing, business, whatever, right? You have to do something different, right? You can't just keep saying the same thing, because everybody's like, I've heard that, and it doesn't resonate. But then all of a sudden, when you snap them up with, oh, wow, I've never heard that. Oh, I've never done that. Oh, Fletcher, what's your name again? Like, this is I've never had this happen before. Like, yeah, let's get you signed up, and and because it's just remarkable. It's just different,
Yes.
And I love that, and I love to actually do a experiment challenge and actually have a whole bunch of people doing that, and then like video record that and like their experience, because I think that would be just to see the trajectory, and it'd be fun to be engaging. Yeah. But hey, Fletcher, before we let you go, I really appreciate your time and just being authentic and really having a good conversation. But where can they reach out to you, bud?
Yeah, you bet. So visit me at at FletcherEllingson.com, just my first and last name.com, FletcherEllingson.com. And you can find me on Facebook, of course. But the easiest way is go to my website. I got all sorts of free resources you can sign up for. Take the happiness quiz, sign up to get some of my free video, 5-day video course, or reach out if you want to do a discovery call. But yeah, check it out there.
Definitely awesome. And guys, those links will be in the description below. Make sure you actually consume his 5-day course. It's actually really cool. And then as well as he's got a cool book on there that you have access to. And then also his YouTube channel below as well. So make sure you guys take a look at that. Also, like I mentioned, share this with your friends, your family, everybody that you know, because obviously it spreads the message, and you can empower people and help Fletcher empower and impact so many people. And then also, before we let you go, Fletcher, is there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah. You also can be resourceful, capable, and flexible. We have way more capacity than we know. We really do. And the last thing I would say is, whatever you focus on, you feel. So practice focusing on a feel-good story.
Awesome. And guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast with Christian D. Evans and Fletcher. Until next time.